Hello, deep-feeling Scorpio. August 18 carries a quieter kind of turning point, one that may ask you to notice what has been quietly pulling your attention away from what matters most. Something may feel slightly out of place, whether it is the clutter around you, a relationship that seems emotionally stuck, or that subtle mental haze that appears when you know you are moving through life without feeling fully connected to yourself. Rather than rushing to fix everything, pause long enough to ask what this discomfort might be revealing, because sometimes the first sign of change is simply becoming unable to ignore what you once learned to tolerate. You may have been wondering why certain patterns keep returning, especially when you have genuinely tried to make thoughtful choices and stay true to yourself. If you have ever thought, why does life keep testing me when I am doing everything I can to stay on the right path? That question deserves honesty rather than another easy answer. What you are experiencing does not have to mean that you have failed. It may be showing you where an old way of coping no longer fits the person you are becoming. Think of it less like a storm tearing through your life, and more like a tide pulling back from the shore, revealing things that were already there beneath the surface. You may feel as though you are caught somewhere between what used to feel familiar and what now feels possible, but that uncertain space can teach you more than certainty ever could. This part of your journey is about recognizing what quietly drains you: an old fear, a habit of second-guessing yourself, an attachment you keep protecting, or even a relationship that requires you to shrink parts of who you are. You do not have to force every door open, and you do not have to carry everything simply because you have carried it for a long time. Some things become easier to release once you stop asking whether they can be saved and start asking whether they still belong in your life. You may also have noticed that your creative energy has not been moving quite as naturally as it once did. That does not necessarily mean you have lost your spark. Sometimes your inner world becomes so crowded with analysis that there is simply less room for instinct, curiosity, and genuine enjoyment. Think back to the moments when you felt most like yourself, when you were absorbed in something without needing to measure its usefulness or outcome. Writing in a journal, cooking something comforting, painting, walking, stretching, or simply stepping away from constant stimulation can give your mind enough quiet for you to hear your own rhythm again. Those small practices matter because they create distance between you and the endless habit of figuring everything out. Scorpio, you can be remarkably perceptive, but even perception can become exhausting when every feeling has to be investigated and every uncertainty needs an explanation. There is a difference between listening to your intuition and interrogating yourself until you no longer know what you actually feel. Give yourself permission to return to what feels simple, honest, and alive, because reconnecting with yourself is not about becoming someone new. It is about remembering which parts of you were never meant to disappear beneath all that mental noise. And that brings you to a more important question. What actually brings you alive right now? Not what will impress someone later, not what will make everything look perfect, and not what you think you should want, but what allows you to feel present inside your own life. Joy can be useful information, especially when you have spent so much energy maintaining responsibilities, relationships, expectations, or plans. Pay attention to the places where your shoulders soften, where your mind becomes quieter, where you stop performing and simply feel like yourself again. You may also encounter something that interrupts your usual rhythm, perhaps through another person, a change in circumstances, or a situation that asks you to respond differently than you normally would. We do not have to assume that every unexpected development is a sign from the universe, but you can use these moments as opportunities to see yourself more clearly. Someone may challenge a boundary you have been learning to protect, or a familiar routine may suddenly stop working. And instead of immediately trying to regain control, notice what the situation is teaching you about your needs. Sometimes contrast is useful because it shows you what you value by making the difference impossible to overlook. Your responsibility is not to control every outcome. It is to become clearer about the choices you are making. If you have a dream you care about, let it influence your behavior, not just your imagination, and ask what the version of you who feels secure in that life would choose differently today. Would you keep explaining yourself to people who have already shown you they are not listening? Would you keep chasing something only because letting it go feels like admitting defeat? Or would you allow your actions to reflect the self-respect you say you are ready for? Your potential becomes meaningful when it starts changing the way you live. When fear rises, pay attention to the story it tells you. Fear can make an old pattern feel like an unavoidable truth, especially when the familiar seems safer than the unknown. Instead of forcing yourself to repeat positive words you do not believe, try something more grounded. Ask whether the thought in your mind comes from what you genuinely know or from something you have learned to expect. There is a difference between being cautious and being governed by an old wound, and recognizing that difference can change the way you approach everything from money to love. If you are hoping for greater financial stability or a deeper relationship, begin by becoming more intentional about what you already have and what you are choosing to build. Gratitude here is not about pretending everything is perfect. It is about noticing what is real, useful, supportive, and worth protecting. Write down what you appreciate, say it out loud if that helps, and then let that awareness influence practical decisions rather than remaining only a feeling. A more grounded relationship with abundance begins when you stop measuring your worth entirely by what you have gained and start recognizing the value of how wisely you handle what is already in your hands. Scorpio, what you are moving through can shape you without having to define you. You may be learning that strength is not always about holding everything together, and that sometimes the stronger choice is admitting that something has changed and allowing your response to change with it. As August 18 unfolds, stay close to what feels honest. Protect your energy without building walls around your heart. And remember that you do not need to know the entire road ahead to recognize which direction no longer feels true. And as you move through the rest of this reading, keep one thing in mind. This is a general message, so not every detail will necessarily mirror your personal experience. Some parts may feel remarkably close to what you are living through, while others may simply offer a thought worth considering, and that is completely natural because every Scorpio is moving through a different set of circumstances. Take what genuinely resonates with you and leave what does not, allowing your own judgment and intuition to remain part of the process. The themes surrounding you now touch several important areas of life, including love, finances, physical well-being, and family relationships. Rather than treating any of these as fixed predictions, consider them as mirrors for where your attention may be most useful. You may be noticing that some areas feel more balanced while others need adjustment, and the purpose is not to judge yourself for that difference, but to become more conscious of where your energy is actually going. For your symbolic energy, I would move away from the pale, airy feeling of light blue and toward a deeper blue-green, something closer to deep teal. Think of it as the color of water when the surface is calm enough for you to see farther beneath it, representing steadiness, emotional clarity, and the ability to remain present without needing immediate answers. If you want a simple image to carry with you, imagine the tide drawing back from the shore and revealing what has been hidden there, not as a warning, but as an invitation to see clearly before deciding what deserves to remain. There is also something important to notice about your practical balance. It may not be that your efforts have produced nothing. You may simply have been spreading your attention across too many areas at once, making it difficult to recognize what is actually working. Look honestly at your spending, commitments, routines, and emotional investments, and notice where you are giving more than you are receiving. A few thoughtful adjustments can restore a sense of balance without requiring you to deny yourself every comfort or postpone every pleasure. In love, you may find yourself looking more closely at the person beside you and thinking about what a deeper form of partnership would actually mean. That could involve sharing more time creating plans together or simply becoming more honest about the kind of life you want to build with someone. But the deeper question is whether closeness can exist without either person feeling the need to control the other. Trust does not require constant surveillance, and vulnerability does not mean surrendering your boundaries. If something feels uncertain, bring it into the open with honesty rather than allowing assumptions to grow quietly in the background. You may also notice that changes within your family are asking for a different kind of communication. There could be moments when people misunderstand one another, or when something important is difficult to explain, and in those situations, begin with the people you trust enough to speak honestly with before trying to solve everything at once. You do not have to become the person who absorbs every tension simply because you are capable of carrying it. Sometimes protecting peace means speaking clearly, and sometimes it means recognizing that another person's emotional weight is theirs to carry. If stress has been building around your work or professional responsibilities, give yourself permission to acknowledge it instead of treating exhaustion as proof that you are doing enough. Talk with the appropriate people when something needs to be addressed. Take genuine pauses when you can, and notice whether your body and mind are asking for space that you have been reluctant to give them. Rest does not erase your ambition, and stepping away for a moment does not mean you are falling behind. It can simply give you enough distance to return with a clearer mind and a more honest sense of what deserves your energy. There is no prize for carrying every responsibility as though you have to hold the entire world together, Scorpio. If your mind and body are asking for space, listen before that quiet signal becomes impossible to ignore. Step away when you can, find somewhere that lets your thoughts settle, and give yourself permission to recover without feeling that you are falling behind. Sometimes peace does not arrive because everything outside of you has been solved. It arrives because you stop fighting every current at once. On August 18, you may notice your sensitivity working differently, helping you pick up on details that you might normally move past too quickly. Instead of treating that sensitivity as something you need to control, allow it to give you another perspective on what has been unfolding around you. The cards that appear here can be read as a sequence of inner movement. The Wheel of Fortune speaks to circumstances changing. Justice asks you to meet those changes honestly. The Chariot reminds you that your response still belongs to you, and the Star opens a quieter space for hope after greater clarity has been gained. The shift is less about suddenly controlling everything and more about realizing what deserves your energy in the first place. For you, Scorpio, emotional cycles can run deep, and when something matters, you rarely experience it halfway. That depth can become a strength when you use it to understand what is changing rather than trying to force everything back into a familiar shape. If work, finances, or personal matters have felt stagnant, consider what the stillness has revealed to you, before assuming that you simply need to push harder. Your ability to turn difficult experiences into greater self-knowledge can help you move forward with more steadiness, while justice brings attention to fairness, accountability, agreements, and the choices that need to be examined carefully. The Chariot then shifts the focus toward direction. You may be realizing that you no longer want to spend your energy reacting to old disappointments, mixed signals, or situations that repeatedly pull you away from yourself. Your confidence becomes more compelling when it is quiet and grounded, and the Star suggests that you do not have to abandon hope simply because you have learned to see things more realistically. Let yourself be around people and environments that make room for that clearer version of you, because connection becomes more meaningful when you no longer have to perform certainty to feel secure. When it comes to your well-being, pay attention to the difference between being tired and simply being emotionally overloaded. You may have become so accustomed to managing your thoughts that you forget your mind also needs periods when it is allowed to become quiet. If you feel nervous, drained, or unusually heavy, acknowledge it instead of immediately trying to push through it, and give yourself some room to decompress after demanding responsibilities. Rest is not an admission that you cannot handle your life. Sometimes it is what allows you to return to it with a clearer mind and a steadier nervous system. In your professional life, the effort you have invested can become easier to understand when you look back at what actually worked, rather than simply measuring yourself by the result. Think about the decisions, conversations, and practical steps that helped you navigate previous challenges, because those lessons can become useful reference points as new responsibilities arise. Some situations may require additional organization, movement, or flexibility, while others may simply ask you to manage the details more carefully instead of trying to solve everything at once. If you are searching for work, stay open to opportunities that may not look like the perfect destination immediately. Sometimes a position can give you experience, stability, or momentum while you continue clarifying what you truly want. And if you find yourself hesitating because you are waiting to feel completely certain, remember that certainty is rarely available before a decision is made. What matters is giving yourself enough information to choose consciously, rather than allowing fear to make the choice for you. In some situations, the next useful step may be smaller and more practical than the dramatic move you imagined, and that does not make it insignificant. You are learning how to distinguish movement that genuinely serves you from movement that simply keeps you busy. With finances, the same principle applies. Look closely at documents, agreements, expenses, and commitments, especially wherever emotion might tempt you to act before you have considered the long-term effect. Your strategic side can be valuable here, but let discernment lead rather than the desire to prove that you can make something happen quickly. Instead of scattering your attention across every possibility, choose the financial priority that matters most and build from there. Because lasting security is usually strengthened through consistent decisions rather than sudden leaps. There may also be support or recognition through people you already know professionally, but allow those possibilities to develop without treating them as guarantees. The more grounded you feel, the easier it becomes to notice which opportunities genuinely fit your direction and which ones only appeal to an old idea of success. Your strength is not simply in taking risks, it is in knowing when a risk deserves your attention and when patience is the wiser move. That distinction can help you build something more stable than a quick win ever could. In love, you may find yourself paying closer attention to the people entering your shared social world, especially if you or your partner have developed new friendships. Curiosity is natural, and if something genuinely unsettles you, there is nothing wrong with bringing it into the conversation, but try to separate intuition from fear before deciding what a situation means. Trust does not require you to ignore what you notice, yet it also does not require you to monitor every detail simply to feel safe. The deeper question is whether you and your partner can speak honestly about boundaries, independence, and reassurance without turning vulnerability into a test of loyalty. If you are in a relationship, there is room for greater closeness when both of you can remain individuals while still choosing the relationship consciously. You may want freedom, space, and your own connections, and that does not have to threaten intimacy when there is mutual respect underneath it. What matters is the quality of the trust between you, especially when something unexpected stirs an old insecurity. Rather than trying to control every variable, let honest conversation show you what is actually there. Because sometimes the strongest bond is built when two people can look directly at uncertainty without allowing it to decide what happens next. There is genuine feeling between you and your partner, but what matters most now is learning how to let that feeling breathe. A relationship becomes stronger when trust is built through honest conversations rather than constant reassurance, and when both people can remain themselves without making independence feel like rejection. These moments that test the heart can reveal where you still feel vulnerable, but they can also show you how much deeper a connection becomes when neither person needs to hold all the answers. If you're single, this is where the conversation becomes more personal. You cannot expect another person to understand exactly what you need when you are still trying to understand it yourself, and there is no shame in admitting that. Before searching for someone to fill an emotional space, give yourself enough quiet to recognize what you actually want, what you are ready for, and what kind of relationship would genuinely feel healthy rather than simply familiar. It is easy to keep looking when you are uncertain, hoping that another person will somehow resolve the uncertainty for you. But when two people meet while both are unclear about what they want, attraction can quickly become confusion, and feelings can become tangled with expectations that neither person knows how to carry. If your emotions feel mixed right now, you do not need to judge yourself for that, but you do have a responsibility to be honest with the people whose feelings are becoming involved. Imagine someone beginning to care about you while you are still undecided about what you can offer. From their perspective, uncertainty can feel like waiting in a doorway that never quite opens, and that is why clarity matters. You do not need to have every detail of your future figured out, Scorpio. You simply need to communicate honestly enough that another person's time, trust, and emotions are treated with care. Family brings another layer of this emotional work. As you change internally, the people closest to you may begin responding to you differently, especially when they notice that you are creating boundaries you did not have before. Old patterns of communication can become visible, including habits that may have been passed through the family for years, and you may find yourself choosing a different response instead of automatically repeating what you learned growing up. You can still be supportive without becoming responsible for everyone's emotional weight. In fact, one of the healthier forms of strength available to you is knowing when to listen, when to speak, and when a problem belongs to someone else to work through. Simple conversations, shared meals, familiar routines, or moments spent together without trying to solve everything can create a warmer sense of connection, while your presence becomes more meaningful when you no longer have to lose yourself in order to keep everyone else comfortable. Your energy may feel moderate, and part of what you need could be surprisingly physical and immediate. If your home has begun to feel stale or disconnected from the person you are becoming, changing the atmosphere around you can give your mind a different place to settle. You do not need to transform everything. Even rearranging a room, bringing in a different color, changing the bedding, opening the curtains, or adding something that feels more like you can shift the emotional texture of the space. There is also a beautiful opportunity to create warmth with the people you care about. If you've been thinking about bringing friends or loved ones together, let yourself make something simple and thoughtful out of that impulse, because connection does not always need a grand reason. At the same time, remember that relationships become richer when you make room for other people's preferences too. Your desires matter, but so do the needs and rhythms of the people sharing the moment with you. Your generosity can be one of your strengths, but you do not have to prove that generosity by giving more than you actually have to give. Contribute to the atmosphere when it feels genuine, and allow yourself to receive as well as offer. The healthiest kind of connection is not built around one person constantly carrying the emotional temperature of the room. It comes from people participating, listening, adjusting, and allowing each other to be fully human. On the more difficult side of the day, be mindful of what happens in the space between feeling something and immediately saying it. When you are emotionally activated, a sentence that feels completely justified in the moment can open a much larger argument than you intended, leaving you defending words you wish you had chosen differently. You do not have to silence yourself, but you can give yourself enough time to decide whether what you are about to say will create understanding or simply release tension. If the conversation begins to sharpen into conflict, patience can be more powerful than having the final word. There are moments when stepping back is not avoidance, but emotional intelligence, especially when everyone involved is too activated to actually hear one another. Let the conversation breathe. Return to it when there is more room for understanding. And remember that protecting a relationship does not always mean solving everything immediately. For students, this same lesson applies in a different form. You may need to stretch beyond the comfort of preparing privately and begin practicing how you communicate when other people are watching and listening. If you have a presentation, rehearse it aloud. Check your slides carefully, make sure the structure is easy to follow, and notice anything that looks unfinished or unclear before you stand in front of others. The goal is not to make everything flawless. It is to become familiar enough with your material that a small mistake does not shake your confidence or make you lose your place. A little preparation can create the calm you need to speak with more presence. And once you stop trying to control every possible surprise, you may find that you are much more capable of handling whatever happens in the room. When it comes to compatibility, Scorpio, the strongest connections around you may come from people who bring something different to your intensity without asking you to become someone else. With Aquarius, there can be an interesting exchange of perspectives, especially when you allow yourself to stay curious instead of needing to reach an immediate conclusion. Their ability to look at situations from a different angle can challenge you in a refreshing way, while your depth can help bring meaning to ideas that might otherwise remain on the surface. With Virgo, the connection can feel more grounded and practical. You may find that conversations become easier because there is a shared appreciation for noticing the details and understanding what actually needs to be done, rather than simply talking around an issue. There is room here for mutual respect, thoughtful problem solving, and the kind of quiet understanding that does not need to be constantly explained. And with Libra, the energy can feel softer, and more balanced. Libra may encourage you to approach a situation with greater diplomacy, while you can bring emotional honesty and depth to the connection. The dynamic does not have to be dramatic to be meaningful. Sometimes the most valuable connection is the one that gives you enough peace to lower your guard and simply be yourself. Scorpio, as you carry this message with you, remember that astrology can offer a language for reflection, but it does not make your choices for you. What matters most is what you recognize within yourself, what you decide to release, and where you choose to place your energy from here. If these words gave you a moment of clarity or helped you see something in a different way, let that insight stay with you as you continue moving through this chapter. And if this reading resonated with you, you're welcome to support the channel with a like, subscribe, and stay connected for future readings. Thank you for being part of this space and for bringing your own experiences, questions, and perspective into this community. May you move forward with a quieter mind, stronger boundaries, and the kind of peace that comes from knowing yourself a little more honestly.